We're live. Here we
Here
are.
we go.
Welcome to the Business Velocity through the 5 Facets of Business podcast. We're your hosts, Dave Newell, Hannah Panuski, and with our guests, which we don't have today, but typically with our guests, we explore actionable insights and share stories of real businesses. Whether you're a startup or a seasoned business leader, understanding how to harness the 5 facets of your business will help you propel your growth to achieve business velocity. Hannah, normally this is where I would say, who are we talking to today? But we're talking to ourselves. So
We are.
Good to have you as always. Good to be in conversation.
Good to have you here as well. I always want to kind of like reach through the computer and like shake someone's hand when they like say that. Good to have you. We're not in person, but good to be here.
Exactly.
Yeah, today it's going to be you and me talking about different things that we care about and different lessons that we'd like to share. But I think we actually kind of want to talk a little bit about, ourselves and sort of what brought us to the work that we do, why we do what we do. And then I'd really personally would really love for you to speak then to some of the leadership and development that I know you really love to do. Since the last time we had a couple of these just you and me talks, I feel like I ended up monologuing a lot about process and data. So I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about leadership. But let me pose this question, Dave Newell.
Yes, Hannah Panuski.
How did you get into being a consultant?
It's a great question. Well, just to give some context for it, some of the folks that listen to this podcast have been asking questions a little bit more about, tell us who you are and why you do what you do. And maybe just to give that context for other business leaders, it's important to be human, right? It's important to have the human element. It's not always just about the task or achieving the objective or the strategy or, I know I can personally get wrapped up in that sometimes. If it's about the objective, it's about the thing. Let's make sure that that's happening. But you got to be human while you do what you do. And so appreciate that prompting from folks that listen to the podcast, and we're trying our best to answer it. So how did I get into the consulting world? Well, it all started on a rainy Tuesday back. No, just kidding. I actually started my career in community organizing. And I will say, when I was in college, I was a comm studies major. Words and human psychology always made sense to me. It was always a space I wanted to be in. Math was a little bit tougher, more work. I actually entered college to be a psychologist, to be a counselor. And when I got there, psychology in higher education was a lot of, testing and science related things. And I was like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. Where's the human dynamic part of it? And so, kind of shifted towards comm studies, which ended up being a lot more of that. I went to a small liberal arts college in the Midwest and found a lot of value in just the critical thinking and understanding, here's how humans think, here's how humans communicate. And, when I graduated, I didn't really know where to go. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was looking at like being an insurance salesman and all the different jobs that just kind of show up. And it was like, just nothing really felt motivating. And eventually I kind of worked my way into community organizing through higher education as a platform. And so that's how I got into higher education. I was in higher education for about 10 years, maybe a little bit more. But I did a lot of kind of creating community projects for students. So I was working with nonprofits and local government entities to design projects for students to do what they call service learning or community-based engagement, community-based learning. And so it was working with, faculty members, students, community partners to design something. And so I think, where I really started to foster that systems thinking and foster that connection to alignment was I was always working with multiple groups who had different interests and different things that they wanted to get done. And my job was to find, well, what are the inroads and how do we get them to swim in the same direction? And so that foundation just kind of kept pouring through in that work. And it's really similar to what we do as organizational development consultants that come in and look at, culture, strategy, operations, story, and finance. They're all systems. They all have things that they need, and they all have, desires and wants. And it's about, can we put those things together? What ties them together and how do we lean in there? So that's really where I started to get that where I really kind of built the capacity to think like that. And I was often advising students and I was advising faculty and etc. And, I started doing some development of leadership programs and selling leadership programs to people and getting people in. And, so it was this kind of playground is the way I think about my time in higher education, where the stakes were lower. So I could experiment and play, if an education session went poorly with a group of students, at least they got something out of it. Like their P&L didn't suffer because we, we didn't cause any harm, so to speak. It just maybe wasn't as good as it could have been.
Yeah.
But, so I had this really wonderful training ground to experiment and play and dive into theory. And I think where I started to transition mentally into something else was I just wanted to have a little bit more of a tangible impact in real time. And I wanted to engage in something where the stakes were higher and consistently higher. Like I just naturally love challenge and hard things. And the harder it is, the more interested I am. And the more I want to get into it and the more I want to see it. Right. Exactly. So, eventually I just started to get antsy where the work I was doing in higher education, I just got pretty proficient at it and I could do it pretty quickly and I could do it pretty well. And so, I started my problem solving challenge brain really started to want more things. And I had the good fortune of connecting with two guys who were on this podcast a couple weeks ago, Pete and Dean, over at Sage Presence, and they gave me an opportunity to come in and do some consulting work with them. And they really taught me how it works. And honestly, the first live session I did where they just kind of, they trained me on some things and I just got put into it. And folks in the room were challenging things and they were questioning. I was like, this is the best. This is the coolest thing I've ever done. I lit up, had so much fun, absolutely loved it. And I was like, I want to do more of that. I want to do that all the time. And so, I'm grateful to Pete and Dean always for just the opportunity for, putting me in that space. And what I realized is, the training and development side of it was natural because I'd always been higher education. I've always been kind of that facilitator. But what I really liked was the problem solving, getting into systems, understanding how things fit together and working. So now what we do is that, right? There's facilitation elements, there's teaching and coaching and all those things. But so my background is like teacher, coach, facilitator, weaves its way into that kind of systems thinking, process orientation, how do things work? And so there's this kind of teaching, but also problem solving aspect. And I think it's been really beneficial as we've evolve over time. And we've worked with clients over time, those two practices, those two approaches really blend well. And we've seen a lot of impact. So I'm grateful for a varied and random somewhat background because I think I've seen how things operate from a lot of different perspectives. And so it's helpful now that we kind of, have narrowed in on certain spaces. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I think that's enough. I talked for a long time. That felt long, but I appreciate it. I felt maybe it felt a little bit more like a counseling session where I just got to process my past. So thanks for listening through that.
Well, here I am. I'm leaning back in a chair. I've got a notepad and a pen, and I'm just going to ask you about the things that make you cry.
Exactly.
No, I think that's great. I think
give me your background. How did you get to where you got to? I know some of it.
Yeah.
But I think it's also an interesting story. I mean, I think part of why you and I connect so well is we are interested in other things and we do other things and we value that about each other and we value about people who work with us. And, I don't think either one of us is like, this is the one thing I do and I'm going to do it all the time. It's a little bit like, hey, this is one thing I do and I love it and I value it. And there's all sorts of other things I'm interested in and I want to pursue those. And so I know you've got a varied background as well, but how did you and I end up in this space?
For sure. Yeah. I actually want to speak to that a little bit more and then I will answer your question. One thing that I think I've really absolutely appreciated and grown to love about consultants, the ones that we've worked with and the people that we've met, is that, yeah, we are all very interested in variety and sort of in like the seeking, like the pursuing of something.
Yeah.
A lot of the consultants that we've worked with are just very interesting, dynamic, diverse people. And we like exploring something and then moving on to exploring something else and then exploring something else. There's so much for us to explore. And then bring all that exploration and all that learning to clients. I mean, that's literally like what we do. And what we're here to do is to be that outside perspective. You know, we were writing some blogs earlier this week and talking about, there's a question about like, is a consultant for you? And one thing to remember when thinking about bringing on a consultant is that we literally talk to so many businesses all the time, over and over again. So we see a lot of the same symptoms, a lot of the same sicknesses then. So, like, what's the true thing behind the
Yeah.
symptom?
Yeah.
Because we get to explore over and over again different companies and different issues. And that is so valuable when you're sitting in the middle of a bunch of fires and you're just in your experience, just in your company, to have
Yeah.
somebody else come in and say, "Oh yeah, I saw this two different kind of similar ways at different companies and this is how it helps them." It's one thing
Mhm.
that I'm going to so watch this. I'm going to connect this to an acting thing and then I'm talking
Ooh.
about how I got into being a consultant
All right.
from being an actor.
All right.
One of my favorite quotes from an interview, I think it was like Chris Pine or some actors talked about like people always look to the director as the end all be all knowledge base on set. But
Mm.
he as an actor has been on more sets because he comes in and he does his job for 2 or 3 months, then he moves on. A director sits and works on a movie for years. So they've maybe made 5 or 10 movies. He's done 50.
Yeah.
So you as an actor have a lot to bring in the fact that you've told more stories. You just have
Mhm.
more of a variety of experience of, I mean, moving into a new person or starting a new business. And so then you bring that to the person that, sure, the director knows a lot, the CEO knows a lot, but the actors, the crew members, they all know a lot too, because they've done this over and over again, probably more than the director has, who's sat with one project or one business for a really long time.
Yeah. There's something about the power of fresh eyes, right? Like
Totally.
experience plus freshness, right?
Totally.
Of that's interesting because when I did it over here, I saw it like this, and that worked, right? Like you can bring an outside perspective in to something that has been all consuming or has been a passion project for a long time. They know it inside, outside, up, down, left, right, east, west. And every once in a while, that's a problem.
Mhm.
It's so deep and it's so insular that
Yeah,
it can get
you
in the way.
you love your graphic design company. You want your graphic design, your website development company to be the best one ever. And you've been working on growing this website design company for 8 years. And for the first 2 or 3, it was just you. And you've been sitting in that one business for so long. I've worked with 5 and I've seen how those 5
Yeah.
have evolved and grown and handled different issues and struggles. And so let me bring some of that to you. Yes, you know a
Yeah.
lot of what you're
Yeah.
talking about, but I also do too because of the exposure.
Yeah.
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 So now to finally circle back and answer your question. So I went to school, got a degree in theater and a minor in marketing. And I got out of school and worked on commercials and short form content for a long time. I helped produce a couple of movies and lots of short films with friends, and then was auditioning as an actor. And I've booked a bunch of stuff and super, super proud of the acting work I've gotten to do. But working as a producer is really hard. You're constantly trying to find your next job. And my soul was tired at 28, but I was really good at it. Like I was really good at, I love bringing people together. I love organizing creatives and ideas and then making all of the things happen in succession, putting the operations behind the creativity kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so then I started working as an assistant to a CEO of an automation company. And we'll get to talk to that CEO pretty soon, which I'm excited to do. And it was a great experience. I learned so much so fast. But above all, I learned how applicable my organizational development skills from producing were to the corporate world
Mhm.
and helped them, kind of as best I could organize And then you came in and we hired you as a consultant to work with our company, and we had a wonderful experience. And then I moved on from that company and took a couple of months away, just focused on acting. And then it just made sense for us to work together again, and have learned so much from you about all these various things we've been talking about and we will continue to talk about, and have myself gotten certified in a couple of different things and looking to get certified in a couple more, just so I can keep learning and developing as a consultant and a process consultant. Um, and I really love this as my day job, because to your point, like, I love being a consultant. I love offering solutions and advice to business leaders. And I love being an actor, and I love creating content, and made another short film this year and hope to make many more. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, I like both sides of the coin.
Yeah. Well, and I always appreciate the modesty around it, but you've been in some big name things and done some really cool stuff, right? With some big name people.
Yeah.
So we don't need to dive into that. Maybe we'll put some of those in the show notes and highlight some of that. But I think what I would say is I love the varied background. I love the fact that you've been in lots of different things. A producer in certain settings with huge name actors that everybody, if we said their names, everybody be like, I know that person. That's crazy that you've been on set with that person. And what I love about that is because, we deal with some big people, right? There's a lot of people that we engage with who are powerful, well-known in their industry, thoughtful people. And honestly, as an outsider, sometimes coming in, it can be intimidating.
For sure.
Like, oh man, I'm working with this person. That's crazy. What am I doing in this room? And, I think for both of us, we've been in some rooms where it's like, hey, we're working with some, well-known, powerful people. And we need to be able to show up and match it and, add value and bring it. And I think it's one thing to, be an outsider coming in, but there's a lot of pressure in all eyes are on you sometimes to say the right thing, to be asking the right questions, to be pushing in the right spaces. And there's this it's almost performative, to be honest. There's like a performance aspect to it of all eyes are looking at you and they're saying, yeah, but how are you going to fix us?
Mm-hmm.
And there's something I find very fun and challenging about that. I think it's weird that we like it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we do. I think I love rooms where it's like, yeah, buddy, prove it. And I'm like, sweet. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for saying that to me.
Mm-hmm.
When it doesn't have that level of stakes, when it's just like, yeah, you could just solve it by doing this. And it's like, yeah, it's just, then what are we doing here? Right? Like, I want to meet people in the hardest places. It's one of our core values is leverage tension. And we believe in that value very much. We know that, where the tension is, where the hard things are, is where the most movement, energy, power, all those things are. And if we don't love it, if we don't know how to run to trouble, our clients won't either. And so one of my favorite things about you is you just sit in that space and you're willing to go to that place, and challenge is fun. And I think we share that quite a bit.
We do. But isn't that interesting too about so I originally, I came on and I came to work for you. And then after a while you were like, no, we work together. Like, don't even call me your boss. And then to see you most of the time be very commanding in any space. And then we had a couple of clients where you were like, I am scared of these people. Like, I am intimidated. And I've gotten it a lot in my life where I am intimidating, but then I enter rooms and I'm like, I am so intimidated right now. And I think that that's such a universal experience. Consultant, business leader, actor, director, barista, whatever, where in some spaces you have such power and you sit in your confidence and you know what you're there to offer. And then in others, the air is sucked out of the room and you have to prove yourself. And I'd be curious to hear you speak a little bit to that, specifically, I think, in the context of how we've helped our clients do that and face that challenge.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I love that you called that out, in part because if I wasn't intimidated, or if the people that we work with weren't intimidated, sometimes we wouldn't be human.
Yeah.
Right? Like, sometimes the stuff we step into, I mean, there's been multiple times where somebody's like, well, what should I do about this? And I'm literally like, I have no idea. That's really hard. Give me some time, right, to think about this, and the eyes are looking at you, and it's like, all right, I just got to take a swing. I got to punch at something, and we're going to work our way through this, and we're going to figure it out. Right. But I think it's that belief that we're going to figure it out. And I trust that in me. I trust that in you. Like, I know I can put things in front of you, and I have no doubt in my mind that Hannah's going to figure it out. Right. Like, may not know the answer, but is going to do the work to make it happen. And so, and I think, with our clients too, like, I think sometimes we forget that we can be intimidating, right? We're consultants that are coming into a space, and, we have business experience, and we have answers, and we have tools, and we have resources. And it can be intimidating to invite somebody in to say, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me? I think that's a very vulnerable, brave thing to say.
100%.
And
100%.
it feels really risky, and it's intimidating. So, I think we get intimidated sometimes by the rooms that we're in, the level of intensity or power, or, whatever you want, or the level of the challenge is sometimes intimidating. And I think our clients feel the same thing. And I think it's what allows us to work well together, is because we can just be human together. Right. It's like, hey, I'm not expecting you to be perfect. I'm not expecting you to have all the answers. And I hope you don't have that of me either. And even to go all the way back to the higher education days, like, part of what I loved about that is it was experimental, right? Like, I got to try things, I got to test things. And so I've always kind of carried this aura of, hey, we're in this together, right? Of like, this is partnership. Like, don't look at me like I have every answer. I just have some tools, but let's put it into place and see what happens. Let's figure it out together.
Yeah.
And so, all of the learning environments we've ever created, right? Like, the learning and development work that we do, the training work that we do, is first thing I say is, hey, I don't have all the answers, and I know you don't either. Our job is to work towards the answer together. And we'll put some things in front of you, and we'll practice, and we'll try, but our job is to figure this out. And I think it just eases the, well, I have the knowledge and you don't.
Totally. Yeah, we talked about, like, the big dog operator.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the big dog operator? Because, like, it's so relevant, I think, to what we're talking about right now, where I felt this too, like, coming onto this team, being like the first couple of clients that I had, that I was like handling solo. Like, I got to come in, I got to have all the answers. I got to fix all the things. I'm going to get into all the areas that are broken, and I'm going to fix it. I'm going to do all of it, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. That does such a disservice to everybody else on the team, to the clients that we're working with, to you, and to me, because acting like I know I have all the answers, first of all, to your point, I do not. And it robs me of the opportunity to learn from other people. It robs me of the opportunity to empower other people. It robs other people of the opportunity to be empowered and to grow. And I think that having good questions is so much more valuable than having good answers. And so, so the big dog operator mentality that we talk about is a leader of some sort who says to themselves, well, I got to go fix it. I got to go find each and every problem. Let me have my hands in all the pots, and I'm going to fix it because I know all the answers. Whether that's from pride or that's from a genuine desire to just help, it still does a disservice to everyone and to yourself, because you're burnt out. You can't do that all the time, and nobody else can rise to the occasion and, step into their power and all those kind of things. So yeah, I think it's so connected to what we're talking about here, where it might be coming from a good place, but you need to find a way to utilize everyone in the room and not listen to the fear that you're the only one who can handle it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It comes back to something I know I've alluded to in the past, other conversations, but it's like this idea of imposter syndrome. And I dislike the fact that we use the term syndrome is associated with it, because I like to think of those as imposter moments. That's just a situation. Like, I feel like an imposter right now, but it's just because I haven't developed competency in this space, because I've never seen it like it is. But if I look back at the history of time, like, I've been able to figure things out. I've been able to solve this problem and learn this tactic and try this thing, and eventually I figured out. So I'm having a moment where I feel like an imposter. Like, what am I doing here? Why am I in this room? How did I get here? Right? Like, why are they looking at me? And if you're not having that imposter moment, then you're not a human being, right?
Mhm.
Like that is
Mhm.
just human. Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
It's the folks that get caught in that, right? Where it's like, where the narrative becomes, and I truly don't belong. And I think
Yeah.
there's a mental shift, speaking even of the big dog operator, it's like, well, part of that is a reaction to fear. Part of that is like being a big dog
100%.
operator
Yeah.
is an identity, right?
Yeah.
It's, well, my identity is wrapped up in my ability to be good at everything and do everything and not need help on anything. And eventually that just is unsustainable.
Mhm.
And so, similar to that kind of imposter moment experience, I think the big dog operator piece is the same. It's a reaction to fear. And it's like, well, and admittedly, I'm the big dog operator in our business sometimes, and I'm really bad at letting things go. And I'm the bottleneck and the linchpin at times, because I'm not really kind of letting go of the vine, so to speak, when there are opportunities to do it. So it's not a judgment on folks that are in that space. It's a difficult thing. And once you become aware of it and you see it, now it's about, well, can I make the choice? Can I make a different choice in this moment? And so, going kind of wrapping all of these things into one bundle, right? It's like when you become aware of an imposter moment, when you become aware of, what am I doing here? Right? Like you're actually, or man, I'm really like the big dog operator here. Like I am the one that's in the way. When you realize that, like that fear is there, now you have a choice, and you can choose to accept that fear. It's not to avoid fear. It's not to walk away from fear. That's impossible, right? You are going to experience fear at some point in your life, and you're not going to be able to just be like, no, I'm never going to be fearful again. Like, yes, you are, right? But you have a choice in that moment to say, well, do I see this fear? Do I accept it? And do I lean into it and build the competency over time to be able to face that fear better, so it doesn't turn into a syndrome? But can I just say, yes, I'm going to risk it. I'm going to take this shot this time.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I think that choice matters. And, we've always described to the philosophy that leadership is a choice,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, if you don't have that insight, if you don't have that learning, you don't have the opportunity to make a new choice. And so all that stuff is just insight into, even just being able to say, like, I'm the bottleneck sometimes. Even just being able to say that, it's like, okay, well, now that I'm admitting that and I can commit to it, now I have a choice. Do I want to continue to do that? Do I want to continue to accept the fact that I'm afraid to let go of certain things, or I have a need to control certain things? Or do I want to make a different choice? Do I want to be the leader that the business needs me to be?
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I love that. I love that. It speaks to, intentionality and being a thoughtful leader, which I know
Mm,
is something that both of us really value and try and instill in our clients.
mhm.
Um, no, I think this is great. So then let me connect, kind of where we are now to the beginning. So my question to you would be, kind of wrap us out here. We both came into this world of consulting from very different routes, and we've kind of still explored other avenues and other um, work or focus areas. But as far as leadership and like being a leader for our clients, or I would say maybe with our clients, what has being a consultant taught you
Mhm.
about being a leader?
Mm. Oh man, so many
Specifically,
things.
like your experience inside of the work that we do.
Yeah, so many things. A couple of things that got touched on in this conversation. Peter Block would say that questions are more transforming than answers,
Right. Yep.
right? And sitting in the question and being okay with the fact that we don't need the answer, we don't have to have the answer. That strategic plans and the best laid plans are just best guesses, right? It's just our best thinking at that time. But not having a target isn't an option either, right? Not having a
Mhm.
contain. I mean, I could go on and on and on about all the things I've learned about being a consultant, or being just learned through the avenue of being a consultant, because I've gotten my butt kicked several times And I've learned several times that, what I thought worked at some point doesn't work anymore because the world is different and people are different. So it's this just kind of constant learning, fine tuning, pushing in, paying attention, trying some things, testing. But the one thing that, a couple of things that I'll always come back to is I'll never walk away from the idea that tension is where good things happen, right? Like that idea of leveraging tension. It's like that hasn't changed over time. Or the commitment, our other values of committing to earning trust. Like trust is an ever moving target, and it's something that if we're earning it, if we're moving in that direction, then that is a stable thing. Adding value, committed to actually making something better because we're there, right? And paying attention to, it's not always like, well, I'm just going to ascribe this cookie cutter program that we do every time. It's paying attention to, okay, so we have tools. How do we use these tools in the context of that organization, which might look different than this other organization over here? Like what we do in a manufacturing setting is going to look different than what we're doing in an e-commerce retail setting. Mm-hmm. Same tools, different application. And so we have to be good at being able to figure that out. And then that last piece around, pursuing something that matters, pursuing purpose, right? Like this should be meaningful to us. And if it's not meaningful, then why are we pursuing it? And I think, what's kind of rung through this conversation for me is both of us love this. It's meaningful, it's powerful, it's important. And we also find meaning in other things. And we're going to pursue those things just as wholeheartedly. Like we haven't even talked about the fact that I'm a farmer on the side, right? Like that's a whole huge part of my life that is important to me. And I'll spend lots of time on a tractor putting in fencing this weekend, and I'm going to love every second of it. And it's going to feel really purposeful and meaningful and good. And it's family oriented. And, if all we did was be consultants and focus on that, then huge parts of our being, huge parts of our identities and lives just wouldn't be as robust and as rich. And I don't think we'd be as good of consultants as we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And scene. No, absolutely. 100%. Well, as always, wonderful conversation.
Thank you for a good prompt. Thanks for kicking it off well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, we can talk about operational processes and data and project management systems and all that. But I do think that it all does come back to good leadership, and good leadership is crafted through just being an intentional person. And we want to inspire our clients and people listening to lead intentionally and balance all the various plates in the air as best you can with all the tools that you possibly can find. So if you're curious to utilize some of the tools that we have to offer, please visit theevolvedifference.com. We've got lots of things to help you with that. Reach out to us. We'd love to chat anytime about leadership. And if you have any prompts as well for us to talk about, always feel free to send those in. You can contact us on our website at theevolvedifference.com. But thank you so much for joining us on the Business Velocity podcast. Today's insights are just the beginning of enhancing your business's momentum. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And like I mentioned, you can also check out our framework along with many, many tools at theevolvedifference.com. We did just launch the 5F community. So if you'd like to join and get access to a lot of resources, please visit our website. There's more information about that on there. And remember, the time is now to take these strategies, apply your learning, and achieve velocity. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.